What's happening, Internet fam? So, I wanted to talk about this article that I'm reading on CNN. Now, it's interesting. This article came up on my Google feed. I try to avoid Google products. I try to avoid Apple products, but I do use an Android phone. I have several different phones. One of them happens to be running Android and stock Android, so I get the Google feed. And they put up this article for me from CNN. Now, what's weird about it is they put the article up, and then almost as soon as they put it up, they then deleted it right afterwards, which I thought was very, very curious. But once I read the article, I realized it's not that curious at all. So let me go ahead and read part of this article to you now. House conservatives urge Trump not to concede and press for floor fight over election loss. Now, I want you to listen to the wording of the CNN article as I read it, and how ludicrously one-sided and just absolutely biased this article is. This is not a piece of information. This is not a piece of news. This is a piece of absolute and complete statist and New World Order propaganda. Now, I want to clear the air first, right off the bat. I am no fan of Trump. I've never liked Trump. When I saw Trump on television when I was a kid, I thought, man, this guy's a douche. My opinion has not significantly changed in like 30 something years. I do not like Trump. However, especially with all the alarming evidence that showed up on Hunter Biden's laptop, it's very clear that Joe Biden is directly in the pocket of China, Ukraine, all kinds of giant corporations. And Biden is absolutely a traitor to the Republic. There's no question about that for me. Now, again, not a fan of Trump. He also seems to be an Israeli lapdog, which means I don't like him. But, yeah, listen to this article from CNN. This just goes to show how garbage CNN is. CNN is garbage. That's the point of this whole thing. President Trump's staunchest defenders on Capitol Hill are urging him not to concede even after President-elect Joe Biden wins the Electoral College vote next week, calling on their party's leader to battle it out all the way to the House floor in January as he makes unsubstantiated claims of widespread election fraud. Listen to this language, okay? First of all, they say President-elect Joe Biden wins the Electoral College. They're just taking it as a given that Joe Biden, who definitely was not as popular as Barack Obama or any other candidate that we've had in years, maybe slightly more popular than Hillary Clinton, who was not popular. They're just taking that he's definitely going to win the election, that he definitely won the Electoral College, that he definitely won the popular vote, and also claim that the widespread election fraud is unsubstantiated. Now, if you watch my other videos on this channel and on other channels, I've shown a mountain of evidence. And that's only like literally a drop in the bucket of the huge giant bucket of evidence of fraud that there was this election. The main evidence is the statistical fraud. For some reason, Joe Biden was only winning in areas that were in highly densely populated areas of swing states. And even in areas that were demographically the same as that, if they weren't in a swing state, he lost by a landslide. So how is he only winning in inner city, highly populated areas in swing states, especially when all the votes came in the middle of the night, and there's all these allegations of frauds by poll watchers. I mean, watch my other videos if you want to see, but the language of this article is so absurd. CNN thinks they've already won. CNN thinks they rule the world. And if we let them, they do. Listen to this sentence here. The view of Trump's defenders is at odds with that of many top congressional Republicans, including leaders of the Senate, who believe the election will be over next Monday when electors cast their votes and make Biden's win official, even though the Democrats' victory in the presidential race has been clear for weeks. Listen to that extremely biased partisan language by CNN. This is CNN. This is news. I mean, the language that they're using couldn't be more one-sided and more obvious. But conservative House Republicans argue that next week doesn't mark the end of Trump's desperate efforts, even though the presidential race has been clear for weeks. This is what all this is saying. Now, just go back and look at all of the allegations of fraud. The truck drivers who were delivering giant trailers full of completed votes from New York to Pennsylvania, the poll workers who were finding sequential votes in their absentee ballots, which is like literally impossible. So many things about this election were an obvious fraud. And then go back and then try to read this CNN article and try to have any kind of idea that there's anything valid about any of it. There is nothing valid about this article. The only thing this article proves is how desperate and ridiculous CNN is at this point. Do you remember earlier this summer when there were protests and people were smashing the CNN building? That's the only time I was on the side of the protesters this whole summer, when they were smashing that CNN building. I thought, finally, these people realize what a blatant lying organization the CNN is, how they've been absolutely propagating the worst propaganda in human history for decades now. And I was so excited that the people were finally smashing a CNN building. I mean, I wanted to smash CNN buildings since I was able to talk, because it was so obvious how garbage that media propaganda machine is. And now suddenly, because, Black Lives Matter is on the side of Kamala Harris, which is absurd. It's completely absurd. Kamala Harris, who locked up more innocent African Americans than any other prosecutor in California history, who barred evidence that would have exonerated inmates on death row. I mean, she is the poster child for what Black Lives Matter should be upset about. And yet now, oh no, it's because she's like a little bit dark-skinned. She's suddenly on the side of Black Lives Matter. She is the worst prison industrial complex candidate that this country has ever put forth. And she didn't win. It's very clear that Trump won the election. Very clear. If you look at any stats anywhere, it's very clear. It's very clear they were stuffing the ballot boxes. It's very clear they were bringing in hundreds of thousands of fraudulent absentee ballots. It's very clear that they were rigging the computer systems, the Dominion rigging computer systems. All of this is crystal clear. And don't get me wrong, I don't like Trump. I've never liked Trump. The word hate is a little strong, but I really don't like him. I've never liked him. But it's very clear to me that he won the election, and that there's no way Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama. That's what CNN is claiming. CNN is claiming that Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama, who was like handsome and charming and could sing Al Green and was like a great public speaker and was like young and healthy and campaigned super hard. Say what you want about Barack Obama. I don't like him either. But I mean, he was out on the campaign trail fighting, and he was doing a damn good job as far as a candidate goes. And they're going to claim that somehow Biden, who was hiding in his basement for most of the election, got more votes than Obama? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Just on the face of it, just think about it for just a second. Biden, the weird creep who says all these weird, creepy things about kids and talks about kids playing with his leg hair and who's constantly like groping and sniffing little girls and stuff, whose son smokes crack, is a legit pedophile, and also is on the take for the Chinese government and the Ukrainian government to the tune of millions of dollars, which we see in the evidence from the laptop that Joe Biden was also taking part of. They call him the big guy in the emails. They're saying, oh, the big guy wants his cut of millions of dollars of bribery from the Chinese government. And you're going to tell me, you're going to sit there with a straight face, CNN, and tell me, A, that Joe Biden won the election despite there's no possible way he got the votes that Obama did. Despite all the evidence of poll workers, despite the fact that in Detroit they were blocking the windows with cardboard so people couldn't see in, despite the fact they were sending people home and so there was nobody there to verify the vote count, despite the fact that there was more votes than there were registered voters in several counties in swing states, the fraud in this election is so clearly obvious. There's so much evidence for it. It's just blatantly obvious. And yet the corporate mainstream media is saying, nope, clear winner. It's been clear for weeks. President-elect Biden, desperate attempts by the Trump campaign. It's so maddening. It's so maddening. And if you don't see who's pulling the strings at this point, the way Netanyahu came out and endorsed Joe Biden immediately he endorsed Joe Biden, even after he was sitting there holding hands with Donald Trump, practically making out on public television with Donald Trump. Israel has run our government for the last 50 years, since JFK was murdered. And Israel's fingerprints are all over the murder of JFK as well. Jack Ruby, his last name was Rubenstein. He was a Jewish mobster. Israel is behind the murder of JFK. Israel was behind 9/11, and Israel has been running our government for 50 years. AIPAC, AIPAC, AIPAC. That is who's been running our government for 50 years. And that's why there's no principled politicians anymore. None of them will stand up to AIPAC. They know it's a death sentence for their political career because they own the media, they own the government, and they're even willing to stab one of their own in the back so they can get one who's just a little bit more their own. You know what I mean? It's so absurd, so absurd. And again, I don't like Trump. I've never liked Trump. I don't think Trump's substantially better than Biden, really. I think he's a corporate sellout as well. I mean, come on, the guy was on NBC for 10 years making the American public stupider every day. This is not a hero that anybody should be worshiping or loving in any way. Trump is garbage, but Biden is so much more garbage. And he's so obviously much more garbage that he couldn't win the election. They turned off the voting machines because Trump was getting so many votes, they couldn't rig it. That's why they stopped the election in the middle of the night in these swing states. That's what a lot of the poll workers were saying. They were saying that there were so many votes for Trump, they couldn't believe it. And so they had to stop the machines because there was no way to rig it with all the votes that Trump was coming in. They were going to have to show the population of America was like much higher than it was in order to stuff enough ballot boxes for Biden to still win. That's what the evidence shows. Look at the evidence yourself. Look at the evidence of all the poll workers. Look at the evidence of all the statistical anomalies. Look at all the evidence for behind Dominion voting and Smartmatic and all the obvious corruption. And then read these articles by these garbage. CNN should be destroyed. Every part of CNN should be destroyed. From the smallest video camera on up to the CEO, that whole company should be absolutely physically demolished by all means possible. And CNN's not alone. It's all of them. Anybody who takes the AP News, the Associated Press News, and runs with it, which is every news media organization, every one of them. CNN is garbage, Fox is garbage, MSNBC is garbage, Politico is garbage, HuffPost is garbage, Washington Post is garbage, New York Times is garbage. They are all garbage. Headline News is garbage. They are all garbage, all of them. All of the media companies are garbage. They've been lying to you about everything for 50 years. They lied to you about JFK. They lied to you about the Gulf of Tonkin. They lied about the Gulf War. They lied about 9/11. They lied about every single election we've had in the last 50 years. They've lied about everything. They've lied about our health. They lie about our health. It's like obvious you need to exercise and eat fruits and vegetables. And they're like, no, eat a bunch of milk and eat a bunch of milk and grains and sugar. You'll be fine. Just live off cheesecake and watch TV all day. You'll be fine. It's like they lie about everything. How is this not completely obvious to everybody at this point? How is it not obvious? Are you so stupid and brainwashed that you actually believe this garbage on the corporate TV? Do you actually believe this language that CNN is using? Does anybody actually believe this? Because if you are dumb. You are dumb as a horse turd in the middle of the road. You are just really, really dumb. If you believe anything CNN says, you are an idiot, an imbecile, beyond mental redemption. Special needs, retarded, use the word you want. If you believe anything CNN is, that is what you are.